Well, good morning from the West Coast here in California. Good afternoon to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to Zyxel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen, and I'm the product manager, sales manager here at Zyxel North America. Good to have you. If you can hear me okay, just raise your hand. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay, and then we can move forward. We are here just to talk about, some of our multi-gig solutions. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Stephen. And looking forward to just sharing what we have in our product portfolio and our solutions that we'll provide for kind of the future of what Ethernet brings to the table. And especially if you're looking to going through an upgrade cycle with your customers with some of the technologies like Wi-Fi 6, you need the speed, you need the power in order to facilitate for that. So let's just dive right in. Just before we go, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box in the Zoom here. Just send me your questions and I'll try to answer them in line. If I can't get to them, then I'll answer them at the end of the session. But feel free. I want it to be interactive. You can use that to interact with me, and we can stop and talk about it a little bit. Again, like this to be a forum where you get to ask me questions, and hopefully I have all the answers for you. So let's just jump in real quick. As if you are new partners with us, I just want to introduce you to the Zyxel networks. We've been in business since 1989, 100 million devices making connections worldwide, 700 employees worldwide in 150 markets. Over 1 million businesses now work smarter with Zyxel solutions. So we look forward for you to be using it, or for your customers as well. We're also committed to environmental social governance, being able to make sure that our manufacturing and supplying of networking equipment is kind of eco-friendly as much as possible. And so we're doing our part in that aspect. We're trusted to deliver solutions to millions of customers around the world, and to end customers who use the solutions, like in a lot of the hotels that we use worldwide, some of the food chains, et cetera. These are just a list of a few of those that we have as our customers that use our products today to provide guest network access, or even just plain network access for their private networks. We are an award-winning brand worldwide with a lot of our solutions, because we do make our hardware and our software as well. So we make a lot of entries into these kinds of awards, and we're able to win those. We work and partner with industry leaders to provide the different types of solutions. So you can see there the list of the solutions we provide there, for anywhere between cloud to Wi-Fi, security solutions, IPTV, integrations, and et cetera. So there's a lot of partners that we work with that provide specific solutions that we integrate into our products, or we co-work with, or we make a strategic alliance to make sure that our products are interoperable with each other. So we ensure all of that with those solutions, and we are solutions driven. If you look at our portfolio, you'll see that because, again, we make the product, we have our own R&D, our products, our hardware, and our software. We're able to work with partners like yourself to provide key feature functionality, key solutions that maybe makes your customer experience better, or make even your management experience better. So we would love that feedback. We're open ears to you to improve our product line. So that gives you an avenue for that. Our portfolio is very comprehensive. We kind of can say that we are an end-to-end solution. Primarily, I tell partners, if you have anything that connects to any kind of network, Zyxel has a solution for that, from security appliances, wires, access points, switching gateways, switches, networks, fiber without PoE, hotspot gateways with guest network access capabilities to manage access points, or to manage even remote access points for security, and being able to manage it in a standalone or a cloud kind of solution. So today we're going to talk about the switching aspect of it, and multi-gig is the future with 10 gig, 5 gig, 2.5 gig, 1 gig, and of course 100 megabits per second. So we have that entire range now. We've now moved on from just having gigabit and then jumping straight to 10 gig. That was a big jump, and a lot of customers we saw, in the beginning of 10 gig, when 10 gig started coming out, it was more for a backbone. It's more for the gigabit network to be able to function at full gigabit speeds on multiple ports, multiple applications that are going across with servers, backup, and then be able to backhaul it to a 10 gig network. But what we're seeing now, of course, is the kind of proliferation of devices and solutions that now can benefit from kind of the little bit more kind of economical speeds that are in between, rather than just jumping from 1 gig to 10 gig. There's now opportunity for speeds that are functioning in between that. So the 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig. So it kind of gets confusing when you're talking about Wi-Fi and multi-gig as well, because now you have a 5G, you have a cellular 5G, you have 5 gig, 2.5 gig, and then 2.4 gig, right, for wireless. So just keep that, kind of straightened out. But this is 5 gig, 2.5 gig, 10 gig is for multi-gig switches. And it's really a great benefit because it future proofs your infrastructure. So if you're going through an upgrade cycle, or you're looking at certain applications like Wi-Fi 6, you may want to consider using a multi-gig switch for that, or maybe some of the servers that you're buying today, or certain applications that you're putting within the local prem for backup, have the ability to use 10 gig, copper. Primarily with 10 gig before, in the previous generation of switches, have been really using 10 gig as like with the fiber SFP plus ports to making those connections. And the copper port RJ45 was really expensive to get. But now it's, of course, moved to mainstream, and this is kind of the normal progression of switches these days, is moving into a Cat5, Cat6 kind of capable product. And the XS1930 series is a standardized multi-gig switch, and it supports those speeds, 2.55 gig and 10 gig, on fiber options, as well as RJ45 Ethernet. So it's a perfect candidate for that application, and also to become, especially with the fiber ports that are in certain of the models, can be a kind of a fiber aggregate of 10 gig. So kind of a very economical, cost-effective solution to provide 10 ports of kind of central 10 gig core. So you're able to do that within the system. So the 1930 series, the XS, so naming convention wise, XS just stands for 10 gig switch, because it's the X Roman numeral for 10. And the 1930 series puts it in a kind of a web managed based kind of series, though we do have some options that are coming in the future for more CLI management that you can do with CLI if that's what you're into. And also these switches can be managed both standalone via web or in a cloud kind of solution. So it's actually was the industry first kind of 5-color LED switch, where it has 5 different colors to differentiate the speeds that are there. So the negotiated speeds on the different ports. So we have that all there. It's kind of color coded there. It's a multi-gig port. This depends on kind of the models. It will support multiple ports, or all the ports with 10 gig, 5 gig, 2.5 gig. And then there's certain PoE models like the 12 HP that can provide up to 60 watts of power to connect to those, power hungry devices like Wi-Fi 6. So you might want to look into that, because some of the new Wi-Fi 6 applications today, especially the APs, are using 2.5 gig capable ports, because on the technology itself with Wi-Fi 6, it's able to produce and push through multi-gig connectivity. So, usually 1.5 to maybe 2 gigabits per second of throughput on the multiple radios and the multiple antennas that it's doing there. It also has a very quiet operation mode. It will initially, spin up the fans, but it does variable fan kind of operation. So in a cooler environment, the fans are not, full, full throttle, and they'll just use it as necessary to regulate the temperatures in the operating ranges. And again, like I mentioned, it can be managed in both standalone with a web GUI, where you log directly into the device itself to make the configurations traditionally, or you can use our Nebula cloud platform solution. So I'm not going to cover too much or at all with Nebula itself, but we do have a lot of webinars you can check out on our YouTube and on our Facebook pages, et cetera. We also have a monthly Nebula solution webinar that you can sign up for as well if you want to learn more about that. But really what it does is it allows for you to manage and deploy these devices very simply, very elegantly, even by scanning just a QR code on the device or on the box that you got the device from, and add it to the system and add it to the cloud. And you can have these templates and the configuration files already prepared before the device even is booted up, even if it turns on for the very first time. You're able to get, once the device gets internet connectivity, calls home to the Nebula cloud platform, and it gets its assignment on who it belongs to, which customer, what's its configuration, and what's its firmware that it needs, and it downloads all that. And so within minutes, your devices are configured. Now, multiply that by access points that are sitting behind that. So let's say you have Nebula access points sitting behind these PoE switches, Wi-Fi 6, they can all be also configured at the same time. So once they get access also to the network, then they're also downloading all that information, getting their firmware, getting their updates, and then be able to go online live as necessary. So it's really a quick way to do deployments, kind of a hands-off if you need to, or you can use most of your technology people, people who are like networking and on higher skilled levels to do all the configurations and come up with the kind of your best practice template that you can use to cookie cutter and cut into other sites that you can then deploy. So really, it makes it kind of a quick, easy way, again, and being able to power it all with all 10 gig backbones or capable 10 gig backbones. So we have our XS1930-24F. The F just stands for fiber, meaning that it's all fiber primarily is the main port count. So here in this particular case, it has 12 SFP plus ports. It's capable of 1 gig or 10 gig SFP. And you have two additional kind of shared ports here with the multi-gig RJ45. So if you have some maybe uplinks or maybe just for simple uplinks, you can uplink these switches together using Ethernet RJ45 copper. But primarily this switch will be used for kind of an aggregate. So you can aggregate like an XS1930-12 HP, the second switch that you see below there. They have two 10 gig ports with SFP. So those fiber ports can then uplink into, or daisy chain, or however you want to build out your ring pattern there for your fiber, or you can even do link aggregation as well. So you can take both fiber ports on that 12 HP and plug it into two ports onto the 12Fs and then provide a 20 gig kind of uplink backbone. So you can do that for redundancy as well, or you're doing it in a ring topology for redundancy. And then our XS1930-10, those are just it's a 10 gig multi-gig port switch. So if you don't need PoE power, but you have maybe servers, or maybe again just trying to make a connectivity of 10 gig around there, there's a lot of devices that may use that without the need for PoE, but needing multi-gig connectivity. So those are your three options right now. We are working on another model as well that is a kind of a 24 port version of these, and so you'll see those coming out in probably in the next 2 quarters from now. Now, of course, these products are shipping today. We do have certain quantities of them. Of course, you guys are all aware of all the shortages on the switch side with components and with devices, and everybody's scrambling to look for them. So check with our sales reps if you haven't yet, if you're interested in any of these switches to even test, to see if we have them available. Primarily, we do have some of them in stock and even more on the way. But again, just reach out to us and we'll let you know what kind of the time frame is. But there's always a great benefit by using multi-gig. The main one most people like is to not have to run any new types of cables. So they can still use existing copper and be able to get benefits from a multi-gig upgrade connectivity. So that's kind of the best scenario without having to rip out all of your Ethernet and have to repull cabling just for this kind of application. Mike asks, is there 48 port on the horizon? Eventually there will be. There always is, and that's always the natural progression. Is it always starts with a smaller port count, and then as the demand for applications where there's higher need for 10 gig or multi-gig across more ports and more applications or more devices, then it kind of moves up. So will eventually see a 48 port, but it'd probably be a little further down the line, just because trying to pump 48 ports with especially a PoE version, you can just imagine if you're going to be doing multi-gig, I'll talk about some of the port. If you're doing 60 watt power on 48 ports, that's going to be a really big and powerful PoE device in terms of power budgets to make sure that it can satisfy that. Or what you'll see typically will happen is the first stage will be like a hybrid version where it can support like up to 24 ports of PoE, and the other one is the other half is 48. It's all about economics and also like kind of mass production level. So eventually it'll get there, but it's kind of the same pattern that you saw with gigabit and 10 gig in general, is that it kind of moved into a 24 port. Then you'll saw like 24 ports with like half power, and then you saw 48 port, but the 48 port has half power. So then eventually it gets to that kind of full power range, but we'll see that down the line again as more and more applications move to this and are kind of forced into using, and adopting these technologies. By being able to use Cat5e, this is kind of the things that you want to just keep in mind too when you're using it, is to find out what kind of cabling you currently have, because that definitely affects what your maximum opportunity is in terms of speed. If you're using a Cat5e, you can't even use it up to 10 gigs. You can only go up to 5 gigabits per second on that Cat5e up to the maximum 100 meters there. But still, 5 gigs is better than nothing, or better than just 1 gig. It's 5 times faster, of course. But if you're using Cat6, which a lot of people are using Cat6, you can get 10 gigs, but only up to 55 meters. So you'll have to be careful, especially when you're deploying with an existing cable, to know that loop length of that cable, because if it's beyond that, and you're expecting to get 10 gig out of that connectivity, you might not at all. So just be careful. You have to go to Cat6a in order to get up to that full 10 gig at that 100 meters. But Wi-Fi 6 APs, servers, different workstations now, especially there's some console stations that can be powered by a 60-watt power PoE Ethernet cable. So then you only have an Ethernet cable that runs to a particular console, and that's being all powered and using the connectivity, as well as being power sourced by a PoE switch. Or if you have applications of that doesn't necessarily need the 10 gig speeds, but needs the 60-watt power, we see some applications there too for just industrial lighting kind of applications that then tie in with meters and temperature readers and things like that. That's built into that, that light control, etc. So we see that application also, useful, because these are kind of the switches that have the 60-watt power on them right now. Eventually you'll see probably a plain gigabit switch that will then support the 60-watt. We already see like kind of hybrids of that now today, and you'll probably see more of that. But again, it all is driven by what applications are out there and what's the demand for those applications and how quickly those are going to get adopted. And so right now, in terms of overall cost, multi-gig applications with Wi-Fi 6 can be quite expensive for an upgrade cycle. But a lot of projects that we're working on today, they have budgets that they want to go to the latest technologies. So these are what you would have to offer in terms of multi-gig and Wi-Fi 6 in terms of those projects you're bidding on. And so we win those projects, and so we deliver those solutions, even though technically, in this grand scheme of things, Wi-Fi 5, AC, AX, AC is plenty for a lot of those kinds of applications, and even gigabit speeds. We're more limited now, in terms of the WAN speeds from the applications itself. So even hospitality and stuff, they're only starting to get to multi-gig WANs to provide more internet connectivity for their customers in-house. But otherwise, most small businesses don't have access to a multi-gig. Now, kind of an interesting thing that we have here is that now we can provide, multi-gig in a slightly higher capacity and at a lower cost that can give you 10 gig fiber. So if you're looking to build out an MDU where you want to provide, a 10 gig internet connection that comes into the building, and then provide up to 10 gigs connectivity to your customers, or at least even multi-gig connectivity, then that's definitely an option, either using fiber to the building, to the tenant, or running Ethernet to the tenant as well. Or you're providing Wi-Fi 6 connectivity that gives them multi-gig connectivity, right? So you can kind of think about offering now services, even on the Wi-Fi level, that gives you more than 1 gig connectivity, or even just gigabit connectivity, because maybe in some applications, some locations don't even have access to that. So now it really opens up that opportunity to get to those higher speeds. Now the switch, like I mentioned earlier, has a 5-color LED. It has it can showcase, it looks really pretty. I mean, it has a lot of colors when you have a lot of different types of connections, or at least what it negotiates in terms of the connectivity. But you get a blue for the 10 gig, purple will show up as a 5 gig, kind of a sky light blue is 2.5 gig. Your classic green is your gigabit, and an amber color is 100 megabits per second. So we have the ability to have that, so you can see that directly. But also what we do is we make it, we use that, and as well as and all the LEDs that we've implemented into this solution, is to provide you kind of a simple, user-friendly display without having to log into the device itself. So not only do you know what kind of ports, what speeds are on those ports, but then also be able to see the PoE mode, whether it's using the AF, which is the 15 watt, the AT, which is the 30 watt, or the blue, which is the BT, which is the 60 watt application. So you can see its classifications while you're just looking at the physical switch, again, without having to log into the device and then see that on which one of the ports. And you can also see its overall power consumption to see the draw on the device. Now, remember also our Zyxel solution has what we call smart PoE. And so it's by default, we'll use consumption mode, meaning that whatever the device that's plugged into the PoE, whatever wattage is being drawn for it to be, used and active in its state, then that's what goes against the budget. So if you have a budget of, let's say, 370 watts, and you had a device that only drew 15 watts, then you'd still have the 55 watts left over in your budget in order to use in other ports, rather than it being all 30 watts, let's say, for that classification mode. And this is very important now, because most of the Wi-Fi 6 applications that you see today probably will use just over 30 watts. So that 30 watt technology, the AT, won't be able to satisfy that power, draw for the device. So it just needs that little bit more power. But if you have a switch that is in kind of what we call classification mode, then it will assign the entire 60 watt budget, against it. So it will take away that from the budget. And so you'll have a bunch of power, almost, 28 watts of power, 27 watts of power that you can't use because it's been kind of put aside for that switch port, from a budget's perspective. But instead, with our consumption mode, then it will, just draw and pull against 32 watts or whatever of power against the budget. So again, you could power up more devices using our switches in that aspect versus one that doesn't do any of that classification. With the LEDs, you also can get information about whether it's in the cloud. So when you're installing it, you can see whether it's trying to connect to the cloud, and if the status to the cloud itself is solid. If it's good to go, then really you don't have to log into it. Your IT manager can just confirm that, okay, I see it now, it's in the cloud. It does have also a locator LED as well to help you or your technician find the switch. Let's say in particular you have a bunch of switches that are stacked together, and the IT manager is trying to identify, or the person at the NOC can actually blink the locator LED so that the technician who's physically there can find that switch if it's not labeled, to do whatever, to unplug port 5 from that switch or whatever they need to do to manage that per se. It also has a restore button that can actually restore it back to a last custom default. So rather than just going to factory default, it can restore it to that default that you've implemented into it. So now this is a really great tool. So it's kind of like when you have your computer and you've just freshly installed it and you have a perfect image of it, or your server has a perfect image on its functionality, and you take an image of that. That's really what this kind of function does, is you will have your switch fully configured. It's the way that you want it, and you can copy that configuration into this default, so that, let's say down the line, a year, something happens, somebody accidentally gets in and makes some changes, and they don't know how to fix it or didn't know what they did. And so you can click on this button and hold it, and it will restore it back to that original state that you had it in that pristine kind of scenario. So that can help resolve a lot of issues that may come up if you have kind of more of a standalone configuration. But in the cloud, though, you have full access to all of the solutions there. But really, that PoE LED there is really helpful to see kind of what your overall consumption is on those PoE ports. So as you're plugging in more power and you have more devices that are coming online, you can see where you're kind of heading right there. But because of 10 gig, we see that small businesses and these applications that come up, there's going to be a bigger level of adoption of those of 10 gig overall. Again, with 10 gig fiber, it was kind of a slower adoption rate overall because it was it was used only for kind of the core side of the network. People weren't necessarily using 10 gig like straight to the device because most of those switches, during that time were fiber 10 gig, so they had to have SFP plus, which is why we had a generation of switches and backup servers and backup storage devices that had 10 gig fiber SFP kind of uplinks to connect it to that network. But of course, now those are switching on to it become more affordable to use RJ45. You don't have to deal with the transceivers, and then most technicians don't have to worry about working with fiber itself and just working with the native kind of RJ45, which most people are used to. So that really helps then to build this 10 gig network when you have kind of that mix now, and then also a smaller port count that's affordable that has fiber uplinks to create and connect to the different types of fiber devices that are out there. So even our 10 gig gigabit switches like our XGS 1930-52 HP, it's an XGS, so it's primarily a gigabit facing switch with 10 gig uplinks. So you can put those switches in the scenario with PoE for 48 ports, be able to uplink it to 10 gig to the 1930-12. So that gives you kind of a 10 gig backbone there. And of course, you could build it into a ring topology in this kind of scenario if you wanted to make sure that it's available all the time. Even if one of the switches goes down, there's still a path, back out to the internet if needed without having to use that aggregation switch. Or you can have two of these aggregation switches and then use that in kind of a redundancy application. But most of our AP, IP, the lower end AX, so Wi-Fi 6, doesn't require the high power PoE, and it doesn't have the extra multi-gig ports that are on there to push higher power. So that's where a gigabit solution still facing to the customer side, to the client side, it makes more sense from a economics or even from a budget perspective. But if you are running some of our higher end Wi-Fi 6 solutions, like our WAX series, then you will probably likely use the XS 1930-12 HPs kind of in this application here, so that you can provide not only the 60 watt capable power, but then have the 2.5 or 5 gig connectivity that those APs can use to maximize. Otherwise, if you still plug it into a gigabit switch, it will still work. And some of the, but some of the speeds there that you can't push more than 1 gig through it, even if it's capable of more than that. So it supports some of the latest, it supports the latest standard PoE, and that's the big difference too. We use IEEE standards 802.3BT for 60 watt power on a PoE port. So that's a standard that we use and follow. So it's interoperable with other devices that are also PoE standard with IEEE 802.3BT. And of course, that is also backwards compatible to the 30 watt AT and also the 15.4 watt AF standards that are there. So a lot of new applications, like I mentioned earlier, laptop computers acting as consoles, POS readers, call stations at nurses' kiosks that are only powered by the device itself. Those are also become popular where you don't have to run, that kiosk can be anywhere you run an Ethernet cable to. So it's a lot easier to hide an Ethernet cable than to try to find power to power a kiosk, right? So it might be random places that you want to put that in. But the biggest one we see for the need of a switch that has PoE, because a lot of these devices you could, if it's only a one-off, right? You have one kiosk, you could just use a 60 watt PoE injector, which Zyxel has as well. So we have this 60 watt PoE injectors that we sell for that. But in applications where there's a mix, there's pan-tilt zoom cameras, there's Wi-Fi 6, there's those kiosks, then it makes more sense to use a higher capacity switch and then running that cable back there, because you still have to have your data come all the way back to your central kind of location your demarcation there to provide the connectivity itself. So it really becomes that backbone, the high-speed backbone. 10 gig can provide for Wi-Fi 6 APs, like our WAX 650S. That's our flagship Wi-Fi 6 solution. It actually has a 5 gig Ethernet RJ45 uplink port, but it can produce 3.6 gigs of speed theoretically through its multi-radio, multi-channel spectrum, Wi-Fi signals to communicate with multiple customers at the same time. WAX for the 510S is kind of the mid-tier version, and it has a 1.8 gig capacity of throughput. And that particular one comes with typically a 2.5 gig Ethernet port. So again, to utilize, to make sure you maximize these solutions, especially if customers are upgrading and saying, you know what, I want the latest AX. I want the latest speeds that are there because I'm upgrading my network. I don't want to upgrade and go from 11AC to just 11AC, right? That's not usually what people will do. They say, if I'm going to spend the money to upgrade my network, I'm going to upgrade it. But you need to also make sure that you don't power it with the old technology, that you have to go to the BT potentially, or you need to look into that just to make sure that you have enough power to provide that. So with the 12 HP, you could provide on all the ports. So some of the comparisons you may see that's out there in the market today, some of the low cost like solutions you might see, it's like, whoa, it's really inexpensive, but you might want to look at it because a lot of them are just 4 ports of PoE or multi-gig PoE, and the other ports are just your multi-gig connectivity without PoE. So they tend to have maybe a smaller power budget as well. So that's how they're doing their cost savings, and that's how their prices are lower. But we have in an 8-port switch, 8 ports PoE, 375 watts. You can connect, 8 Wi-Fi 6 access points. Again, because of that consumption mode. So you could fully load this switch up. You still have your 10 gig uplink ports to go out to your core network or, wherever you want to go. So, and it's still backwards compatible. So if you have a mixed network of maybe some of the higher capacity APs are in the main areas and you have kind of the lower capacities, you can balance that out as well with this type of switch. So really beneficial. Some of the comparisons, for example, the Ubiquiti, if you can find any of these other switches, we do have the 1930-12 HPs in stock today. So there is a lot of that available if you are in need. The street price on this switch with 375 watts, 8 ports with 8-port multi-gig and 10 gig uplinks is about $999. So that's the street price. If you are a Zyxel partner, obviously you're going to get your discounts at distribution. If you are not a Zyxel partner, make sure you reach out to our sales reps. We have a list at the end of this webinar on who to contact, depending on the region you live in or where your business is in. And we can hook you up with the discounts that you are needed. There's no cost to join. But compare that with like the Ubiquiti. See, the Ubiquiti has a 4 multi-gig port, even though it's a 6 port there. Some of the other ones have 8 ports of 1 gig and just a couple of uplinks. D-Link has a 2.5 gig, with 8 ports, but the power budget's quite low in that aspect, and it can only do 2.5 gigs on the multi-gig, not 5 gig as well. So there's a lot of different kind of comparisons there, but overall, like it's not, again, it's not as kind of a per budget, per wattage price. It's very cost effective. And then that's the PoE version there. So you definitely need that PoE 60 watts. So the D-Link doesn't even have the 60 watt capable, even on the 240 watts there. So just keep that in mind as you're building that. And you may need Wi-Fi, so the 60 watt for some of those Wi-Fi 6 applications, making sure you have that. And of course, you get to manage it the way you want to. Manage it either in standalone mode, or you can even use our free licensed Nebula Cloud platform. So we offer a free cloud within our Nebula platform that gives you, visibility, gives you the auto provisioning, it gives you only 7 days of logs. But you may have customers who are more of a break fix kind of customer, but you want visibility, you want access to it in case you need to troubleshoot it or to make changes to the network for whatever reason. You can with our free cloud. But most of our partners will go into what we call our kind of our MSP level, because it does give you 365 days of logs. Those logs don't expire or disappear per se in that year. You then get you can set up monthly reporting for your devices as well. So you can have auto customized with your logo and send out monthly reports. That's really beneficial if you're adding security on top of this as well. You can then see where people access, how much bandwidth they're using. You can also show how much PoE power is being used versus the budget. You can also customize the widget display when you log into the dashboard on the particular customers. But Nebula really gives you that platform to manage multiple customers from a single pane of glass. And the MSP level of it allows for you to be more flexible to managing multiple customers all at the same time. So, definitely take a look at that. Our Nebula cloud platform does have a free trial on it as well, or just a demo site you can check out. Just go to nebula.zyxel.com and it'll take you to the portal there for that you can just log into to kind of get a feel of what Zyxel Nebula provides for you. But it gives you, again, just a lot of information, a lot of very beneficial connectivity, especially if you're a newer, maybe VAR, or maybe you don't want to build your own backbone or backend system to have all of this data information, be accessible. You no longer need to build like a VPN tunnel to it. You don't have to open up ports. You don't have to do any of those things that we had to typically do before in order to remote manage a particular device. So you can do that now with Nebula. So really, that's the great benefit of that. So definitely encourage you to use that. And we stand behind our products. We actually have a lifetime warranty on our hardware, on our business class products, because of our design. We use higher temperature ranges for the chipsets and thermal designs to make sure that it works in that in the operational modes there in the temperature. We also have smart fans, again, to lower the noise, but also to make sure that the device is cool. A lot of people want silence in our some of our models that have non-PoE are capable of having fanless designs. But unfortunately, I think with 10 gig, it also runs hot because you're pushing a lot of computational power and juice through the CPU and through the boards and stuff. So a lot of them still have some sort of fan. If you go in for fanless models, typically there's gigabit ones that have no PoE that are fanless. But with PoE, there's just too much power going through there that produces way too much heat. So, and especially in a compact design, we have to make sure that it's cool. So we use a smart fan to make sure that that's functioning. And also we use high quality fans too, because fans are typically the number one thing that fails in a switch besides the capacitor. So the capacitors here, we also use solid state capacitors to make sure that that's as efficiently, with long failure times in terms of long times between failures. The mean time between failures typically on these switches can be, 700,000 to 1.2 million hours, which can then be, something like 60 to 125 years, something around there between failures. But we use that. We have noise filters to enhance the stability in terms of its power. If there's power fluctuations or if you don't have clean power, that wherever you're deploying the device, so it helps to provide a better stable power throughout the device itself. And then again, we use solid state capacitors to provide the longevity of the devices. And that's another piece that will typically, in a lot of competitor switches, they'll use the cheap salt water capacitors, and those burst and leak over time and cause the switch to no longer function. So that's why, again, we can stand behind our lifetime warranty. And then again, the smart fan can be used now. If you have quieter fans, you can more likely deploy them into areas, maybe into a conference room that needs supports, and you don't want to have to run long runs of Ethernet, or within different types of areas where it can be hidden. It can be much more quiet in an office environment. But we see a lot of these too if you're using it in the scenario where it's kind of all the devices are plugged into it. It's typically in a server closet or in a floor cabinet in the building. We see when people are deploying in a hotel, each floor will have one of these switches as kind of an aggregate, or they'll have it all in chain within a ring within the floors. And then of course it goes out to the APs that are, within the floor itself. So a typical application you'll see kind of in this standalone here, this management, you'll have a firewall, which is also then Nebula capable. You'll have a, actually this model is an older model. You should be using our USG Flex series, but kind of similar from there. You'll have a firewall that's manageable in the cloud. You have your switches that are managed in the Nebula cloud, and then all of your access points are managed in the Nebula cloud. Again, just gives you full visibility, full network access to all those applications. So this is kind of that scenario where you can manage multiple types of customers: retail offices, branch offices, campus schools, hotels, department stores. What we see Wi-Fi 6, primarily this current application upgrade cycle, is from a lot of hospitality and schools and education. Because I think over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of budget that hasn't been used because either students or people weren't really traveling, so that the hotels weren't wanting to spend the money to upgrade, a network where no one is going to be using it. But now, of course, things have been opening up, and so a lot of those projects are now being pushed forward and being requoted with 10 gig and Wi-Fi 6 technologies. And then especially in the hotels as well, just again, 10 gig and Wi-Fi 6 technologies, because they're going to be upgrading anyways. They want to go to kind of that future-proof application there. And so using Nebula Cloud gives you that flexibility. And so Ubiquiti, D-Link, they also have kind of a, somewhat of a product that has multi-gig, but this is the fiber 12 port gig. And kind of the comparisons that you see there. It's a smaller kind of form factor as well, a little bit more compact in its dimensions there. But again, it's cloud manageable and standalone manageable. So that makes it very easy for you to manage, as well as some of the layer 3 type technology and layer 3 light functions, as well as IPv6 functions that are available for the routing there as well in this type of switch. The 12 HP typically has, again, a higher capacity than those other ones because they do have smaller number of ports or less multi-gig. For us, since it's a 10 port, it has to have all ports capable of at least, the 10 gig capabilities if it has that. And our PoE budget's typically much higher than some of the competitors that are out there as well. And then we have our XS1930-10. If you're looking for kind of an 8 to 10 port switch that doesn't need Ethernet connectivity without PoE, then you have the switching capacity here you'll see as well. It has 10 ports, and it can do up to 200 gigabits per second on that. So that means 10 ports, 10 gig up and down all at the same time, non-blocking on the power, and also layer 3 functionalities. Similar, the whole series will have the similar function set from a feature standpoint. And then the main difference is just with and without PoE, or maybe your fiber connectivity. These are some of the accessories. I usually don't show these, but I wanted to make sure you all knew that we do also carry transceivers. We in larger applications, or if you're looking for more like bulk purchases of some of these PoEs, some of these transceivers for your fiber connectivity, make sure you take a look. We have bulk packs. So we have like a 10 pack of some of these models, the typical ones that we sell, or the ones that move the most or people buy in quantity. Then those typically have a 10 pack, and that gives you a much reduced kind of a pricing scale. It's more economical to look into that. So we can purchase that, and of course you can stock those as you need. Or even when you're using it in a bigger application, then there's more use for a lot of the fiber transceivers. So you'll want to buy more of them rather than just buying the singles from those. So definitely check that out. And then if you're looking for 10 gig uplinks, we have direct attached cables, which are very economical and cost effective as well. If you're just needing a 10 gig connectivity that goes fiber to fiber, anything from 1 meter to 3 meters long, you can make that because it already has the fiber transceivers, and it has the fiber cable that's connected between them already. So it just like becomes an uplink, a direct attached cable. And so again, those are cost effective rather than buying your own transceivers and then cutting and terminating your own fiber to make that connection. So these are the sales reps that we have representing Zyxel here in North America. David Chen functions, and everything in the orange there you see is Canada and most of the eastern region. Andy is focused on the western region there on those states, and Jacob is in the central region there. So you can take a look on which state you are in, and then who you can contact. Of course, if you don't know or you forget, you can always email sales@zyxel.com, and we'll direct you to the right person. Just if you provide us your information on which state you belong to, then we can get you directed right there. Teddy asks, what is the E designation with the SFPs? Are the same specs and same distances? And typically the E is just kind of the E and R could be economical. Let me just go back to real quick to see which particular one, just to see. So the SRE is the economical switch. So they're the same exact spec as the SR, and the SR-E is the bulk pack kind of designation. So really not functionally no difference. It's just the way that it's packaged. So you're able to buy, so that's the SR has a bulk pack, the LR has an economical version, which is like a bulk pack there. Yeah, so the ones that have a designated E there will be a bulk pack kind of version. Thank you for the question. All right, so those are the sales reps. Again, if you have any questions, sales@zyxel.com. And if you're not part of our partner program, this is a free program. It's called ZAP, a Zyxel approved partner. And so we want you to be kind of benefiting from that. If you're not already a partner today, it's no cost to join. You can just let us know, fill out an application, and provide us with your distribution account numbers that you want loaded. And so we will load into DNH, Ingram Micro, TD Synnex, Wave, Target, or Pace International to give you the discounts that you may be missing or you don't have. We start you at the silver tier, and that gives you about 16% discount off distribution. If you get to our gold tier, we give you 20% off at distribution pricing. So what you see at what distribution would charge you, after when you log into your portal, you should see about a 20% drop in that price compared to that from before you had before you're on the program. But you just have to maintain certain sales levels over the course of the 6 months to maintain that tier or to move up to the tier. If you do it, a lot of customers we have in silver, and just with one project bumps them up to gold tier, and you stay in the gold tier for until the next period of evaluation. So even if you go partial, they say 3 months from now, you get up to gold, you're going to stay in gold for at least 9 months, because we don't just, evaluate you gold at that 6 month period or that first 3 months there, but then we'll evaluate on the next cycle around if you just made that jump. So really it's a really good program to allow for you to make money selling hardware. Also, if you haven't gotten an email from us, make sure you check out some of our trade shows that we're going to, some of the ASCII events and Channel Pro events that are coming up in the next few weeks. I'm going to be in Boston next week at ASCII. So if you're in the Boston area or would like to join us or visit with me in Boston, find out more from that. You can always email us and we can provide you the information. Or you can go to ASCIIevents.com to get more information and to sign up. Make sure you use your promo code Zyxel, and it gives you free access into it. Gives you all of the tickets to attend the event, all the receptions there as well. So definitely take a look at that and join us at any of those events that we have coming up. And if you'd like to connect with me more, LinkedIn, you can connect to Zyxel at Zyxel-US-channel. Or you can look for me as well. It's just, I think it's just Zyxel Try, or is it just Try? I don't even know my link. I don't even know my LinkedIn link. I need to find that out. But you can find me pretty easily if you look up for Zyxel and Try, TRI, and you'll find me. And you can always connect me with me there, or you can check out some of our other videos on YouTube at Zyxel America channel. And of course, this one will also be posted to the YouTube side as well after this is over. So if you want to come back and review it, or you have team members who would love to join or couldn't join but would love to see this content, please point them to that. Now, if you have any further questions, it's now your turn. You can use that Q&A box to send me questions, and I will answer them as we can. But if maybe you don't think about it now, but you might have questions later, or you want to reach out to me or our sales team, you can send me an email, tri, @zyxel.com. The benefit of being here now 18 years, I just celebrated my 18th year anniversary yesterday at Zyxel. So benefits of being here that long is you get a 3-letter first name basis email address, while everybody else gets a dot last name. Teddy asked, can Zyxel update his Vizio stencils? If not, in top, at least for the switches, we do have some basic ones, but we don't have necessarily a person who has gone through and redesigned some of the newer stencils for Vizio. A lot of customers ended up just using kind of our product pictures or high quality photos that we have on our website. But I can always make that request to our team that we continue to have requests for Vizio stencil designs. Scott asks, is there any plans for a multi-gig gateway on the roadmap, like connecting to a 2-gig internet provider? That's the hard part. There are multi-gig gateways, and Zyxel does have that on the consumer side or on the telco side of our business, service provider business, that can offer 2.5 or even 5 gig connectivity. But the downside of it is that it doesn't provide anything more than like an SPI firewalls, because in order to do multi-gig security level, it becomes very expensive, because now you're having to do multi-gig throughput of full UTM, which is currently the bottleneck that we're seeing in today's age. So a lot of customers are, some of our ISP type customers are using our fiber switches with 10 gig or multi-gig, and just delivering that pipe to the customer and letting the customer just handle the, figure out what kind of router they want. Or, you find something, well, we give you a 2 gig connection, but then you can have, 1 gig that's used, to be secured, and the other gig is not as secured, so it's just doing guest network access. Or they're providing the 2 gig where the guest network is non-secured per se, right? It's kind of more open. It maybe has some basic content filtering and SPI firewall, but it's not doing the full UTM. So we're seeing that segregation, right? If your network piece for the private network needs to be fully secured, because you're the business, you're doing PCI because you're doing credit card processing, or you're doing, it's a dental office and you need that HIPAA compliancy, then they'll have that piece coming out of a switch that will provide, 1 gig or just, hundreds of megs connectivity for that firewall that can produce that full UTM protection and do that for that private network. And then the guest network access for the hotel or for the business, again, can fully utilize the 2 gig, switch connectivity to a more basic router. So it could still be a similar, Zyxel solution where you have one that has full UTM turned on, and then the other firewall that can be load balanced or a link aggregation to provide the higher connectivity. Now, we do have plans on the firewall side of things that can push multi-gig with a more, I would say, more comprehensive firewall than a SPI. But if you want to use multi-gig, it'll have multi-gig ports on it. But if you want to do multi-gig throughput, then you have to kind of choose, again, like what level of UTM you can push through it. That's kind of the bottleneck that we're facing. The reality that we're seeing today is, in order to do that, you'll either have to use a very expensive box to push the traffic, or you're going to have to find some sort of cloud scanning capability where all the traffic is going through a virtual firewall or a cloud-based firewall that has kind of unlimited processing, so that it can push the traffic just quickly through a VPN before it goes out to the internet. So then that's scanned both in and out through that cloud application. So we'll see that pop up as well. And our firewalls will also facilitate that, in being that it can connect to a Microsoft Azure or a AMS VPN to Amazon. So you can do that, and our products are certified for both of those applications. And so if you have a cloud-based firewall, Zyxel is in the works of working on a cloud-based kind of firewall system as well as we migrate into that, where the local firewall is becoming more of just a packet pusher. It's a kind of a being able to push more traffic, can still do, the security things and firewall rules, but all the UTM kind of high scanning that happens is going to go to kind of move more towards the cloud in order to increase the capacity, because it's getting this threshold where local capacity is no longer going to be capable of handling these kinds of speeds that we need, especially for the business and small business. Let's see, Teddy asks, are you seeing requests for Wi-Fi 6E APs already? Not for throughput, but also density. Yes, so IoT and density, and which we also have a roadmap for our Wi-Fi 6E. Not necessarily kind of full on requests. People always are inquiring about the latest kind of technologies, but we won't see mainstream probably for at least 2 years in terms of more applications. So some of the early adopters, they're gonna jump on it, but of course, Wi-Fi 6E is going to be fairly expensive again until mass production comes out and a mass acceptance. I mean, we're just into the kind of the Wi-Fi 6, AX level of things, and it's only kind of starting to pick up steam in terms of people adopting it now. And those who've just upgraded, they're not going to go, well, even though it's available next year. 6E, I'm not going to upgrade, unless I have a very specific, density or IoT application that they need for that. But otherwise, Wi-Fi 6 in itself on a normal usage, even kind of a high capacity, high throughput. I mean, you think about it, we survived a lot of applications, even in today's age with, 11 AC, right? So even Wi-Fi 6 is now an improvement to AC. And even before then, we were using, 11G, right, kind of technology, and it worked. But of course, it's always improving, gets better. But it becomes that balance, like from a price, do I pay for it for this improvement, or do I survive? Does it work fine for what I use it for? Now, a lot of businesses today, until there's applications or until there's a device that everyone is using that requires it, we won't see that push until that day comes. Teddy says, last question, I promise. Zyxel in-room wall plate AP. So we do have wall plate APs. It's 11 AC at the moment, mostly because of chipset shortages, where we haven't yet released our Wi-Fi 6 in-wall, but we do get a lot of requests for the Wi-Fi 6 in-wall as well. So Wi-Fi 6 in-wall APs are on the horizon, but for now, it's you have to use the AC for those in-walls applications. Again, you don't need necessarily the high density or the high capacity of Wi-Fi 6, but I understand that when hotels want to upgrade with an in-wall type, and they want to move to the newest technology, they're just going to buy the newest version. So that's what we're seeing mostly. But most of our customers now that have asked for Wi-Fi 6 as an in-wall, we're okay with an AC version, because it was just serving that room, up to however many devices. Even if it had 10 devices in that room, it would work perfectly fine. So it's, again, just a matter of what you want. Thank you for the questions, Teddy. Well, I appreciate the time. We've just come up with, 2 minutes till, so I get to end early, save you some time, a couple of minutes of your day. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you just having to spend the time this last hour and hearing about our solutions. Look forward to seeing you at any of our shows coming up. Again, ASCII, Channel Pro, those are coming up. We're also going to be at High Tech at the end of June. So if you're going to Orlando, Florida, at the end of June, I don't look forward to the humidity there, but I mean, hey, it's going to be a necessary evil. So we'll be there in Orlando, in Florida at the end of that month as well, to show off our hospitality functions or our solutions in Nebula, and hope to see you at any one of those shows. And kind of the benefit, which I forgot to mention, if you do show up to one of those shows and you talk to us, we can get you hooked up to the gold tier level of our partner program for that period. So it's beneficial if you want to go, again, just to be able to visit with us, especially if you're a partner. Well, so that's longtime partner. We've never met face to face. It's a good opportunity, and I've had a great time at our previous shows that we've had to meet some of the partners that we've been longtime partners, but never had been able to be face to face. So that's an opportunity for us to meet. So look forward to that opportunity, and look forward to seeing you next time and talking to you more about Zyxel solutions. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.